Not every chain is made of steel. Some are made of memories. How do you know you're not being played right now? Not yesterday, not last year, right now. In this very moment, what if your beliefs, your opinions, even your desires weren't really yours? What if the choices you call independent were actually whispered to you by a screen, a voice, a fear? You just scroll, swipe, and agree. You fight over things you didn't choose to care about. You defend people you've never met. You imitate strangers because they feel familiar. And somewhere in all of it, you call it freedom. But freedom without awareness is a costume. Autonomy without vigilance is an illusion. Because manipulation doesn't need permission. It just needs attention. Most people imagine manipulation as something obvious. A lie, a scam, a red flag. But the truth is far more dangerous. Real manipulation doesn't come with a warning. It wears a smile. It sounds like something you already believe. It wraps itself in your identity, your insecurities, your longing to belong. And it works, not because you're weak, but because you're human. You were wired to trust stories, to follow patterns, to seek safety in the familiar. And the world learned how to use that against you. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Comment below. Have you ever realized you were being manipulated? What woke you up? News only inflames instead of informing. Ads that don't sell products, they sell fear of missing out. Inspirational influencers who only feel real because they're paid to. Romantic partners who love you like a performance. Even rebellion has been monetized. You call yourself self-aware, but awareness means nothing if you're only aware of what they want you to see. The harsh truth is this: you may not be living your life. You may just be acting in someone else's script. The worst kind of manipulation is the one you never realize is happening, because the puppet doesn't feel the strings, it just dances. So ask yourself again, how do you know you're not being played right now? The answer to that question could unravel everything. And that's exactly where we begin. Manipulation doesn't work because people are stupid. It works because people are human. Your brain is a miracle of evolution, but it was never designed to process the chaos of modern life. It's a survival machine, not a truth machine. And that's exactly why you fall for it. Every day, your mind is flooded with more information than it can handle. To cope, it takes shortcuts, mental defaults known as cognitive biases. They're not flaws, they're features, designed to save you time, energy, and emotional strain. But what saves you can also control you. Take cognitive dissonance. When your actions don't match your beliefs, your brain scrambles to make them fit. So if you're manipulated into doing something wrong, you don't always push back. You justify it. You tell yourself it wasn't that bad. You silence the discomfort, and in doing so, silence your own alarm bells. And then there's emotional validation. Humans crave to be seen, to be loved, to be understood. Manipulators know this. They mirror your thoughts, flatter your fears, validate your anger. They don't convince you with logic. They convince you with emotion. So no, you're not a fool. You're a product of a beautifully flawed design. You were built to survive, not to see clearly. And in a world that exploits every corner of your psychology, that survival system, those instincts, they're not just being triggered, they're being targeted. Manipulation works not because you're weak. It works because you were never meant to face it alone. What if manipulation wasn't evil? What if it was survival? Niccolò Machiavelli never set out to be loved. He wanted to be understood. In The Prince, he stripped power down to its raw, unfiltered essence, ugly, efficient, and brutally honest. And in doing so, he gave the world a guidebook not on how to be good, but on how to win. Machiavelli believed that most people are driven not by truth, but by perception. Appearances matter more than intentions. Image matters more than integrity. A leader who looks just is often more powerful than one who actually is. And fear? Fear is more reliable than love. Love fades. It gets distracted. It questions. But fear stays loyal. It obeys without hesitation. Machiavelli argued that if you must choose between being loved or feared, choose fear. Not because you're cruel, but because fear creates order, and order creates control. Then there's the illusion of choice. People crave the feeling of control, but actual control? That's dangerous. That's unpredictable. So the most effective ruler, or manipulator, offers a false choice. Two paths, both leading to the same destination. You feel like you've chosen freely, but the outcome was engineered from the start. Sound familiar? It's not just politics, it's your workplace, your school, your relationships, the illusion of being heard, the illusion of freedom, the illusion of influence. But behind the curtain, decisions are already made. Narratives are already crafted. Machiavellianism isn't about evil, it's about clarity, about seeing the world not as it should be, but as it is. Now imagine, what would you do if survival depended on control? If your safety, your career, your reputation relied on shaping perception, hiding truth, managing fear? Would you play fair or would you play smart? Machiavelli forces us to confront that part of ourselves we try to ignore. The part that knows influence isn't earned through virtue, but through leverage. And whether you love him or hate him, the question remains, if everyone around you is using manipulation to get ahead, can you really afford not to? Because in the game of power, honesty is beautiful, but it rarely wins. They don't just lie to you. They study you, mirror you, memorize the exact shape of your needs, and then offer themselves as the answer. They don't take control all at once. That would alarm you. No, manipulation is slow. It's seductive. It starts with a smile, not a threat. First, they'll praise you, make you feel seen, special, chosen. You're unlike the others, they say. You're different, and that's exactly what you've always wanted to hear. This is called love bombing, an avalanche of affection, attention, validation. But it's not about love, it's about dependency. The moment you start relying on their approval to feel worthy, they own a piece of your mind. Then comes gaslighting, a silent war on your reality. You say something hurt you, they say you're too sensitive. You recall a conversation, they say it never happened. Bit by bit, they chip away at your confidence until you stop trusting your own thoughts. You stop asking what's true, you start asking what keeps them happy. Now they'll introduce guilt tripping. You try to set a boundary, they remind you how much they've done for you. You pull away, they say you're selfish. You speak up, they make you feel like the villain. Suddenly, your integrity becomes ammunition in their hands. When guilt doesn't work, they'll use false urgency. They'll say, you have to decide now. This opportunity won't come again. If you don't act, you'll lose me. Scarcity becomes pressure, and under pressure, you stop thinking clearly. You start reacting. Then there's us versus them rhetoric. This isn't just in relationships, it's everywhere. Politicians do it. Influencers do it. They divide the world into two camps, the awakened and the asleep, the righteous and the corrupt, the in-group and the threat. They make you feel like part of something bigger, something noble. But the price of belonging is blind loyalty. And finally, authority mimicry. A person speaks with confidence, dresses the part, throws in jargon, quotes studies you've never read. You assume they must know more than you, so you defer. You agree? You stop questioning, and that's all they need, because manipulation isn't about strength, it's about access. Access to your emotions, your patterns, your fears. Even advertising uses these tools. That influencer selling skincare, she doesn't just tell you it works, she says her life was changed. That candidate asking for your vote, he doesn't just promise progress, he paints a villain you need him to defeat. That friend who always needs saving, they don't just need help, they make you feel like their savior. And you give in because you want to help, you want to believe, you want to matter. But the moment someone uses your goodness as leverage, it's no longer connection, it's control. So here's the truth, manipulation wears many masks, and most are so familiar you won't even flinch when they appear. But once you see them, truly see them, you can't unsee. You start to notice the script, the patterns, the push and pull, and slowly the strings begin to break. We stay because manipulation doesn't just speak to the mind, it whispers to the wounds. It doesn't conquer through logic. It seeps in through loneliness, insecurity, and unhealed history. You don't fall for a lie because you're stupid. You fall because the lie feels safer than the truth. Maybe it's not the illusion you believed in. Maybe it's the comfort it gave you. The manipulator doesn't have to be perfect. They just have to be what you needed as a child. Someone who sees you, someone who stays, someone who gives you what the world refused to. This is where it gets dangerous, because manipulation doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like love. They say the right words. They hold you close. They promise protection. And in that moment, it's not them you believe in. It's the part of you that still hopes to be saved. That's why attachment theory matters. If you grew up in a world where love came with conditions, you learn to tolerate pain if it means feeling needed. You confuse inconsistency with passion, control with care, and that trauma response doesn't vanish with age. It just finds new actors in the same old play. Manipulators don't just choose their targets randomly. They gravitate toward the ones who are already bleeding inside. Because someone who doesn't believe they're worthy of love will accept almost anything in its name. Belonging, validation, safety. These aren't luxuries, they're human essentials. And if you've ever gone too long without them, the first person to offer them, no matter how toxic, can feel like home, even when it's a prison. So when you ask, why didn't I leave? The answer isn't weakness, it's humanity. You didn't fall for the mask. You fell for the feeling of being chosen, of being seen, of finally not being alone. But there's a cost, because every time you accept love that hurts you, you teach yourself that pain is the price of connection. And that is the deepest manipulation of all. Not what they did to you, but what you believed you had to accept. You don't need to outsmart everyone. You just need to stop handing them the strings. This isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming precise, clear, aware. The truth is, you can't stop people from trying to manipulate you, but you can stop giving them permission to succeed. And it begins with radical awareness. Start noticing what makes you react, who pushes your buttons, what words make you feel seen or ashamed. The more you become aware of your emotional triggers, the less they can be used against you. Awareness is the first wall between your mind and their influence. Not a fortress of cynicism, but a filter of clarity. Next comes emotional regulation, because manipulation thrives on urgency, on panic, on emotional floods. So when someone provokes you, pause, breathe. Let the wave crash without pulling you under. Delayed reactions aren't weakness, they're wisdom. They give you space to think, to observe, to reclaim your internal pace. The second you stop reacting on cue, the performance loses power. Then comes information control. Don't overshare. Not everyone deserves access to your fears, your dreams, your pain. Manipulators thrive on data. Every confession, every vulnerability is a map they use to navigate your psyche. You don't need to lie. Just don't bleed in front of those who sharpen knives when you speak. Set boundaries, clearly, quietly, and hold them without guilt. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your time, your energy, or your peace. And when someone violates those boundaries, watch what they do. That reaction will reveal their real intentions. And lastly, practice detachment from approval. Because the need to be liked is the oldest leash in the world. You are not here to be universally accepted. You're here to live in truth, and that truth might disappoint some. It might confuse others, but it will liberate you. This isn't about becoming cold, closed off, or heartless. It's about becoming self-possessed, so rooted in your values that no storm of persuasion can uproot you. Remember, the goal isn't to control others. It's to ensure they don't control you. Because the most dangerous manipulations aren't the loud ones. They're the subtle shifts in who you think you have to be to stay loved, safe, or successful. So stop shrinking for approval. Stop bending for peace. Stop handing your story to those who only want to rewrite it. The moment you pause before reacting, the moment you ask why before you agree, the moment you choose your boundary over their validation, That's the moment you become unmanipulatable. Not by outplaying the game, but by refusing to play it at all. They don't need to chain your body, they just need to flood your mind. Manipulation isn't always personal. Sometimes it's systemic, embedded, invisible. You don't see it, not because it's hidden, but because it's everywhere. Society doesn't ask you to think, it asks you to comply. From the moment you're born, you're taught who to trust, what to chase, how to behave. School trains obedience more than curiosity. Media rewards emotion over truth. Politics thrives not on solutions, but on division. And advertising? It doesn't sell products, it sells dissatisfaction. You're not enough until you buy this, wear this, believe this. It's not a grand conspiracy, it's behavioral design. Soft control is the most effective kind of control. It doesn't command, it suggests, it doesn't punish, it shames, it doesn't silence you with force, it just buries your voice under noise. Trends tell you what to desire, memes tell you what to believe. Virality becomes morality. You start measuring your worth in likes, shares, agreement, and resistance? Resistance is labeled difficult, angry, problematic. Society doesn't crucify rebels anymore. It unfollows them, cancels them, silences them through social starvation. You learn quickly, conformity gets applause. Dissent gets isolation, so you adapt. You mute your doubts. You laugh when others laugh. You post what's safe, not because you agree, but because you're tired. Because standing out is exhausting when the system rewards blending in. Even rebellion is now prepackaged, marketed, monetized. They sell you the illusion of difference while guiding you through the same predictable patterns. This is the psychology of mass manipulation. Keep the population entertained, outraged, addicted, distracted, and they'll never notice the strings. They'll argue over headlines while ignoring the hands writing them. They'll fight each other while serving the same machine. The prison isn't built with walls. It's built with algorithms, expectations, incentives. So if you've ever felt like the system is built to keep you numb, exhausted, divided, you're not imagining it. You're experiencing it. And the only escape begins when you stop asking how to win the game and start asking who built the board. Freedom has a flavor few are willing to taste, because the moment you stop being manipulatable, you stop being predictable. And when you stop being predictable, you stop being liked for the wrong reasons, by the wrong people. You'll notice the silence first, the invitations that stop coming, the laughter that once echoed around you, now feels distant. You didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped laughing at the same jokes. You stopped nodding at things that didn't sit right with your soul. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You're no longer playing their game. When you step out of the performance, it becomes obvious how many others are still on stage. Pretending, agreeing, compromising, you'll lose people. Friends who only loved the version of you that was easy to manipulate. Communities that thrived on your silence. Systems that fed on your obedience. And yes, there will be loneliness. Because clarity is quiet, and truth doesn't come with applause. But in that quiet, something else appears. A stillness that isn't numbness. A solitude that isn't empty. A life that feels real even when it hurts. Because now you choose your words, your thoughts, your path. You are no longer shaped by fear or praise. You are no longer baited by validation. You are no longer a reflection of what others need you to be. And in that space between the noise you left behind and the self you're discovering, you begin to taste something rare. Not happiness, not comfort, but power. The kind that doesn't need an audience to exist. You don't have to choose between power and peace. Influence isn't evil, it's inevitable. Every word you speak, every decision you make, every emotion you share, it moves others. The question isn't whether you influence, the question is how. Most use it to control, to bend, to extract, to win. But there's another path, one quieter, stronger. Conscious influence. It doesn't hide behind manipulation. It doesn't seduce with flattery or threaten with fear. It leads through clarity, through honesty, through alignment. Conscious influence is when you speak, not to be followed, but to be understood. It's when your boundaries teach others how to respect themselves. It's when your presence gives others permission to be more, not less. You don't shrink to comfort egos. You don't exaggerate to gain approval. You become the kind of force that shifts rooms because you are whole, not because you are loud. That is real power, a Machiavellian mind sharpened by awareness, a heart untouched by the need to deceive, not control, not compliance, resonance, because the strongest influence is the one that doesn't have to hide. Now that you've seen the strings, will you still dance? Not because someone told you to, not because the crowd is clapping, but because the rhythm is finally your own. The greatest lie wasn't that you were weak. It was that you needed someone else to define your strength. They told you who to be, what to want, how to live. And maybe for a while it worked, but deep down you always felt it. The dissonance, the tug, the quiet rebellion whispering beneath the noise. You don't need to fight the world to reclaim yourself. You just need to stop handing over your mind. Stop making yourself small to stay liked. Stop twisting your truth to stay safe. Stop dancing for strings that never had the right to move you. You were never powerless. You were simply distracted. Now you're awake. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You see the patterns, you hear the scripts, you feel the pull, and you stay grounded. That's what it means to be unshakable. Not invincible, just undeniably yours. So when the game starts again, when the music plays, when the masks return, pause and ask yourself one final time. Now that you see it all so clearly, will you still dance?